Welcome to the Home Building Hub, your essential podcast guide to building your new home. Hosted by industry experts Colin Bischoff and Darren Brennan, this conversational podcast will help better educate you about all things new home building so you can avoid costly mistakes and enjoy your building experience to the fullest, no matter which home builder you choose.
Hey guys, before we kick off on the episode, I want to introduce you to a new phase of the Home Building Hub. We have decided to go back to school, that is SKOOL. We've created a community based on the back of a podcast we've been running for so long now. We've created a community for you, for all home buyers to jump in and get access to a whole range of tools, checklists, information, and most importantly, find other home buyers in there so you can follow people's journeys, you can share your own journey, and we're excited to build the most trusted community that is independent and objective in the whole country. So get in there, it's skoolschool.com. Look up Home Building Hub, download the app, come and say hi, and we will see you in there. G'day folks, welcome to the Home Building Hub. You're with Colin and co-host Darren Brennan as always. Today we're going to talk a little bit about a thing called the Shared Equity Scheme, and we're going to explain what it is, how it works, whether you can qualify, what the caps are, all those sort of goodies, Darren. I think it's, I'm going to steal your words, it's something that might be a little bit untapped. You know, it's a good opportunity here, isn't it? So we're going to give people some insight what it is, and it's not actually just for first home buyers either, is our understanding. So yeah, let's get into explaining it. How you going, Dezza?
Yeah, real well, mate. Thank you. Going great.
Nice.
It's a bit warm here today. We're recording at a different time of day. We're just changing things up a bit, Cole, which is good. So yeah, it's nice and warm, mate, in my study here today. So bring it on. Looking forward to this one. And it's interesting. The federal government helped to buy shared equity scheme is what it's really called. It got launched back in December last year, but it's sort of sneaking under the radar a bit. And I've had a couple of customers actually apply for it. I've seen the applications. It's quite interesting, the whole process that they go through and what that looks like. And like you say, I really feel it's quite untapped. And even just preparing for today's episode, it's like, hold on, there's more and there's more. And so it's pretty cool. And I think hopefully people will take a bit out of that today. And, you know, there's a real opportunity if you're looking to build a new home, because this is the first time it's been opened up to two-part contracts, being your land contract and your house contract. And so there's been previous shared equity schemes, but not like this. So, yeah, it's really quite exciting. So I guess getting straight to it, mate, in a nutshell, it's a federal government initiative, as I said, launched back in December to help Australians get into their first home or into a home by lowering the upfront costs of buying property. So what they're trying to do is help you buy a property that may be slightly outside your bracket of affordability and taking out a chunk in that with you, which is, you know, really allows you. And the example we read through earlier, Cole, was fantastic, where someone's been living in an area and really wants to buy in an area and they can't quite afford it from a borrowing capacity, but the government can step in and might take up a little slice of that pie to help you get into that area. And I think that's where it's really interesting, you know, like sometimes you just have to move down the road because you can't afford anything else. This might change that dynamic a little bit, which is fantastic. So the program's there to really help people get away from that traditional having to save a 20% deposit and you know, trying to avoid lenders' mortgage insurance and all those things. You know, particularly where we're seeing costs are rising and savings difficult, you know, like it's not easy out there. We hear about cost of living all the time. We've obviously recently had an interest rate rise that, you know, all just chips away at that affordability piece. So, you know, it becomes like a bit of a mountain you've got to climb, and this is trying to lower the height of that mountain, I guess. So making it much more easier. So, certainly there's, what was I going to say there? Sorry. Plenty of people are aware there's been a previous shared equity scheme. But as I said earlier, this is the first time you can build a brand new home in a two-part contract, a house contract and a land contract, that gives you an opportunity to step into that market, which is fantastic. So I think it's, you know, really, really positive. You know, it's a whole different ball game, this side of that, and it really makes people, you know, opens up a whole nother market into, an affordability piece. Certainly, we have a lot of people who really want to build a brand new home. It's for a lot of people, it's a rite of passage is to go brand new, not second hand. And we talk about that a lot on the podcast about second hand homes. So I think that side's fantastic and really will help people out. So I guess the other bit is if you're building a new home, the government will share up to 40% equity. Whereas if you're going for an established or second-hand home, it's only a 30% equity. If you pair that with the stamp duty savings as well that you get by buying new, because you're only paying stamp duty on the land component, and if you're a first home buyer, you may be eligible for a discount or no stamp duty. That's really favourable. That's starting to give you a fair bit more coin to play with that might get you into the property ladder where you just didn't think it was all achievable. So I think that's a great position. So if you found a block of land and you found a builder that's got a design that you really like and you think that this is starting to work, under that scheme, the government can contribute up to 40%, which is awesome, of the combined cost of the house and land together. And they can basically help you get into the market. So, I think, Cole, if you want to run through the example, that'll really paint the picture quite clearly. But it's really exciting. Like, the more I look at this and the more I think about this one, I think it's a really interesting concept. A lot of people will be sketchy around the government owning a piece of their home, but I think if you just park that right now, if you take a loan out from a bank, they own a chunk of your home. How's that any different? You know what I mean? It's just like having two banks, except you're not having to make repayments on that second amount, which is fantastic.
Yeah.
Give us the example.
Well, that's
What's
true.
the example like?
Yeah, I think there's going to be it's natural to respond a little bit when it's the government, like, what's the catch sort of, but
For sure.
there's actually some good merit here. I mean, we're talking about someone who's getting out of renting and getting into their own home. Like,
Absolutely.
So, if there's a way and a path to do that, then you're probably not losing, you're better off, for sure. So as an example, how it could play out, let's assume that your land is, let's say, $300,000. Your build is $400,000. So it gives you a total cost of $700,000. So under the Help to Buy scheme, the government will cover up to, in a new build, 40%. So that's $280,000 they'll cover, which leaves you $420,000 to get in terms of a loan to secure it. Okay, so if you are eligible, you actually only need a 2% deposit as well, which would be around $14,000 in that example. So you think about those numbers, Darren, like, packages, depending on where you are, of course, what state and everything, but 700 is realistic in some of those areas, for sure. If you're not buying, a Taj Mahal or something, it's certainly realistic. And if you can get yourself, as I said, out of the rent and into a new home, and then it increases in value and you get some equity out of it, it's just setting yourself up. Like, the next one, you can go for it yourself, So people have to look at it that way. And I think it's really important to understand that, yes, the government does share equity in your home, but this is 100% your home. It's not, the government and yourself on the home loan documents. It's you. It's your home, 100% your home. And really, probably that leads to the next question that's in everyone's mind, Darren, is, well, what happens when you sell it? So the government proportionally shares any gains or losses in your property. So relevant to the 40%, for example. So hopefully these stack up. But if the house is bought as a package for $700K in the example, and you fast forward 5 years, and now it's worth $900K, then they will take 40% of that difference, which is about $80,000, but you'll still have 120 of equity ready to move on to your next property. So as opposed to maybe never being able to, in that 5 years gone by, save the amount of money, that 20%, to get into a house in the first place. So you're now ahead of the game. You got yourself a property and move on to the next. And so I think, looked at the right way, it's actually a very good scheme for people, Darren. And I think you said before, it doesn't have to be first home buyers. That was correct, wasn't it?
Yeah, that the example that we read earlier on the government's page. That suggested basically a husband and wife who've lived in an area for some period of time Now, again, it didn't specifically say they were or weren't first home buyers, but it said they're living in an area. Let's say the income cap's the price cap was 950. They're trying to buy a house at 900, but they could only borrow with their deposit and the loan up to say a house of 750. The government steps in and pays the other 150. They've got that shared equity at 150, and they've been able to now live and continue to have their life in that same pocket where they probably couldn't have afforded to live. And I think that's fantastic. So yeah, it doesn't read. And again, please, do your own research on this too, and go through that process of putting your application in. So don't assume that you're just getting approved anyway. Go through that process and make sure that you tick all the boxes to get approved. But it doesn't read that you need to be necessarily a first home buyer. You just can't be an investor. So you have to live in it. It's got to be owner occupied.
Owner oct, yeah, which is obviously fair enough. And you said before also stamp duty is a good win. You can save on there with a new build. But also if you are a first home buyer, you can still get the grant, can't you? So
yeah, absolutely. So you can get the first home buyers grant. And you can also, any of those government schemes essentially. So first home buyers grant, the stamp duty reduction is also available to you. So it's a lot in your favour, And I'm thinking about, I've got adult children now. I don't feel like they're adults at times. Don't say that. Hopefully they don't listen to this episode.
No, they wouldn't listen. They'd be a bit too cool to listen to Dad on a podcast.
Exactly. Yeah. But, my adult children, my eldest is 22, she's starting to think about buying a house, and I'm starting to think this scheme could be a really good way to get in earlier, I'm just starting to really trigger my head as to how's this going to help my kids out. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
So lots to like about it. Yeah, which is really cool. I think, Cole, the other bit is obviously the deposit part overwhelms people a lot of the time. So only 2% deposit. That's really positive. I think the best part is the government doesn't charge interest on each share. Yes, it's taking a share of the equity or the loss of equity, the gain or loss of equity when it's sold, but they're not charging you any interest on that. They're just putting down the money for you and without interest, which is, again, so good.
If someone else put the money in, so it happens quite a lot where more than one camp gets into a property or something, and they split it. Maybe there's 4 people at whatever 25% each, but sometimes there's just one person who contributes some money to get you into it, and they will most certainly be charging you interest, just like the banks do. And so that's pretty good little win. A bit of comfort there, I think you should get from that.
Yep.
That there's not these extra hidden charges. I suppose it's just when you sell it, you do get the equity part. They get their profitability share. But if it doesn't go well, if you need to sell it, for whatever reason, and it hasn't really got any equity and it's gone backwards by 20 grand, then you actually, they share in that loss as well.
Sharing the loss,
which no one buying property plans for that to happen.
No,
but it's still comforting, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in the short term that taking a bit of the pressure off might also really help people. You know what I mean? Sometimes you're borrowing so close to the line that this just takes a little bit of that pressure off, gives you a bit of breathing space. Also when they're assessing you for the loan, they're assessing you on a lower amount, which means that, they're more likely to approve that loan, which is fantastic. So, yeah, I think it's a really exciting part of it. I guess there are eligibility requirements for that as well. So things to be aware of. Individual cap is $100,000, so income cap. For couples and single parents, it's $160,000. So if you fall into those categories, you may well be eligible. The other bit is you've got property price caps. So they are for the house and land combined, and they must fall within the specific limits, which vary from location to location. But an example would be Melbourne would be $950,000. Sydney would be 1.3 mil. If you're looking in regional areas in New South Wales, it's 800 grand. Regional Victoria is 650. There are some regional capitals that they consider. So, for example, if you're in Geelong, you could be at 950 also. If we talk about Queensland, in Brisbane, it's $1 million in the regional areas, and I'm assuming the Gold Coast would pick up the million, but I don't have that info in front of me right now. But otherwise, you're at 700 grand in regional Queensland. WA, capital city, 850, 600 grand in regional. South Australia, 900, 500 grand in regionals. Tassie, 700 grand in the capital city, 550 in regionals. The ACT's $1 million in all areas. Northern Territory, 600 grand in all areas. You've got a few others, the Jervis Bay Territory and Norfolk Island, 550, and Christmas Island and the Cocoa Islands. Geez, we might go live out there, Cole. That'd be fantastic. 400 grand. So obviously pretty cheap to live out there too if they've got 400,000 caps on them.
Could do a podcast out there, Daz. No problem.
We should. That'd be fun.
Cocoa.
So,
yep.
Tell us a bit more about the other bits of the criteria there, mate.
Yeah, important to understand. So some of the other things, and as Darren said, do your own homework. This is what we can sort of gather and gain from our homework. Australian citizen you must be, and you must be over 18 years old. You cannot have owned a property previously. Well, that knocks out the first home buyer thing, doesn't it, Darren, from earlier? If that's the condition.
Yeah, I think that should read more, cannot own a property currently, more so than previously. I think there's a bit of a...
Yeah, okay. So it's some of this and everything we come across with this sort of stuff is always a little bit of subject to interpretation. So please do your own homework, double check that.
Yeah,
we really encourage you, find a broker who's doing these and who can understand and explain it all to you to be absolutely certain. Cannot receive any other shared equity scheme. You can receive other grants, etc., if applicable, but not shared equity schemes on top.
So some of the states are doing shared equity schemes as well as the federal government. So obviously you can't do both.
And in terms of what you're allowed to build, so you've talked about the caps, you talk about individuals and couples and families and so on. In terms of the products you're allowed to build, they do have some restrictions and things like that. So it says here you should not have any variations to the building contract. So it's got to be fixed price upfront. That's what you're getting. No changes after it. All the things like site costs, colour selections, upgrades, and developer requirements, etc., which should all be firmed up upfront when and in your contract. Once it's been signed, the pricing is locked in. Needs to be approved by the government. So they don't have the ability, and they're not nimble enough to be able to adjust to a variation, things like that. So that's the contract. That's what's reviewed. That's what's approved or not, and off you go from there. And we think, but again, it is subject to interpretation that potentially it might require turnkey, fully completed, but we're not 100% sure on that.
Again, looking at the information today, I couldn't pick up on that, but previously I'm sure I read that. So hence me suggesting that to you earlier, that looks like it's got to be full turnkey, because again, the government wants to see the houses, if they have to sell it and it needs, down that path, because for whatever reason, they want to see that it's a fully completed home, ready to be sold if necessary. So
yeah, it definitely favours. I think it favours a first home buyer, someone who's a bit younger, doesn't quite have that money, or someone who actually, it doesn't have to be younger, but someone who's never had that 20%. And now this gives them an opportunity to get in there and treat this as an investment property in terms of that house, those colours, few upgrades, and let's just get that done and we'll get out of renting and into a home. That's really the goal here. It's not to be that necessarily the house you live in for the rest of your life. I don't think that's the plan, but good option there, I reckon.
Also, Cole, if let's say you move into one of these, and that example you gave earlier where the government would hold 280,000, you'd be at 420. Repayments on 420 might actually be less or near what you're paying in rent right now, and quite possibly maybe less. So you might be able to take out a loan, and that's what the bank says you can borrow, but you've already been renting a place that's got a higher weekly repayment than that. So you start to chip away on that mortgage, and you might be able to get in front of your mortgage pretty quick.
Yeah,
and all of a sudden, you've gone from renting to owning and got yourself out of that bit of a pickle. And, we've seen it with our own friends at times where they've never owned a home, right? And they're getting into they're getting older now. We're getting older, and they have never owned a home, and there's an opportunity there. And I see this as being, I feel like tapping a couple of those people on the shoulder and saying, "Have you heard about this? Because you've been renting for years, and you could get out of that and do this, and probably save some money potentially every week that you could tip into your mortgage and pay it off, and actually get ahead and go, how good is this? I now own the joint. I want to paint a wall. I can do that. I'm not up there. I'm not upsetting the landlord if I do something to my home and all those sort of things. So
Have
I
the
think there's really
inspections
some
and yeah,
all that
you
stuff.
don't miss the
Yeah,
inspections and stuff.
yeah,
Yeah, it does. I mean, it turns the cogs in your mind a little bit. Like I don't know about the deposit side of like genuine savings and if you can have like your parents as guarantors or all that sort of technicality. I'm not sure, but it certainly opens up your mind to think about like your example with your children is like, well, they're not children; they're adults now, and they're actually ripe for the picking in this sort of scheme. Like it makes sense. So yeah, we'll probably I guess learn the next layer through, but we thought we'd share it on the surface for you today. So any catches, Darren?
yeah. I
Any
guess one of the
catches?
catches is it's in high demand right now. So there is a limitation of only 10,000 spots per year, and that's what the government's announced initially. And about 25% of those spots have been used, so 2,500 in the first 2 months. So that's a pretty good take up, Cole. Right now, and so it looks like over the next 12 months, that first year's worth of 10,000 spots is probably going to be fully exhausted. So you may actually have to join a waiting list to get onto those. So, jump on and take advantage of that, I guess. The other consideration is the market conditions. So, while this obviously provides relief for home buyers, there are some industry experts pointing to the fact that this may increase competition for not only places within the scheme, but impact the overall market dynamic, especially when it comes to home prices. So, demand from government programs like this have traditionally driven up prices, in specific areas. So, when you combine it with the other stuff like the 5% deposit scheme, first home buyers scheme, etc., it's pretty attractive right now. So, let's see how that plays out. It's certainly worth some consideration on all of that. So
Yeah. Well, okay. So just to summarise it all, if you're eyeing this as an option, obviously do your homework, jump online, have a look at those things. But there's a bit of a checklist to get you started. So number one, check your eligibility, of course. Um, make sure that you meet the income cap. Make sure that the property price limits are realistic for the area, whether it's the city or the regional area you're in. Contact participating lenders. So go to a broker and make sure they understand who can and who cannot get amongst this, because there's no point talking to someone who won't do it.
yeah, on
Get a
that front,
pre-approved. Oh
Cole,
yeah, go.
it
Yep.
does look like right now CBA and the Bank of Australia are the only two lenders right now that are signed up to the scheme. I was talking to a broker about it. They suggested there would be other lenders getting on board, but
Right.
from the information on the government website today, they were the two lenders. So talk to your broker again. They can help organise it. They'll help facilitate it for you, but it'll be one of those two lenders right now that are the participating
Yeah.
lenders.
Cool. Get a pre-approval as part of that process, because we see that all the time. People trying to get what they think they can afford and then get a bit of a shock. So get a pre-approval up front, get that done. Understand all the costs. So in terms of what the government covers, you can understand, but we just mean in general, when you buy a house to build, understand the costs. And there might be an episode or 127 that you could go through that might help you with some of that stuff, I reckon, Darren. So please make sure that you do your homework on those things. Make sure that you've got everything included, because you won't be able to change it later, as we discussed. And make sure that you have the approval from Housing Australia and pre-approval from the correct lender, as we said, before you pay any deposits. And that's a bit of a top 5 checklist to get you cracking. Yeah.
No, I think it's
Nice.
a great scheme. I'm actually pretty bullish about this scheme, and looking forward to helping a few people out that are looking to, build using the scheme. So, I want to get a bit down and dirty. I'd like to become a true expert on this on Cole, because I reckon there's such an opportunity to help people out that may not be in a position to be able to buy or not realise that this scheme's there to put them in that position to be able to buy right now.
Yeah, it's good. Excellent. Well, hopefully we've opened your eyes to anyone that might suit this scheme, and go and dig in, do a bit more homework. And as always, if you guys enjoyed what you've heard today, please jump on the website or the platform you're on, I should say, and leave us a 5-star review. It really helps spread the podcast far and wide. If you have any questions and so on and so forth, please jump on the website. You can send us an email directly. But ideally, if you've got a little bit of time, jump on SKOOL, that's school, type in Home Building Hub, and you'll be able to find a whole bunch of resources in there as we slowly build a community of people who are building a home, have built or about to build or waiting for land to title, etc. We've just got so much value in there for you, completely free. You just have to sign up. That's all. So, other than that, thanks again for listening, and we'll see you guys on the next one. Thanks for listening to the Home Building Hub. As part of the podcast, we have to be a little careful to cover ourselves on a legal standpoint. So we do have a disclaimer. Whilst we're all about providing value to you, this podcast should not be considered legal or financial advice. It does contain general information only, and you should seek out independent professional advice on your own personal situation before you make any legal or financial decisions.
1,